Welcome to Wagon Train Wednesdays, presented by the Archway. He might have been called a Renaissance man. Joseph Goldsborough Bruff was a sailor, a map maker, an artist, a writer, and an amateur geologist who was working as a government draughtsman in Washington, D.C. when he first heard about the gold rush in California. The former West Point cadet quit his job and assembled a company of 66 men who wanted to travel with him to California. They each paid the sum of $300, worth the equivalent of nearly $10,000 today, to purchase the supplies, wagons, and mules they would need for the journey. Bruff's traveling company was called the Washington City and California Mining Association. They gathered in Lafayette Square in Washington, D.C. on April 2, 1849. They met briefly with President Zachary Taylor at the White House. Then they were escorted to the train depot by the Washington Light Infantry Militia and set off for their long journey. At the end of the rail line, Bruff and his men engaged 14 large wagons pulled by mules for the long haul across the country. On the trail, they joined 90,000 other people who became known as the 49ers in a race across the country to the California gold fields. Bruff had an eye that was trained for detail and kept several journals. Every day he documented the weather, the plants, the animals, and the minerals his group encountered on their journey of over 2,700 miles. He sketched many of the places his company visited, including landmarks like Chimney Rock. In the end, his detailed journals were illustrated with more than 300 drawings. Through the land that would later become Nebraska, Bruff and his men followed the Great Platte River Road. The company reached Fort Kearny on June 16th, when Bruff met with Colonel Benjamin Bonneville, who had become famous when Washington Irving told his story in the 1837 book called The Adventures of Captain Bonneville. When they finally reached California, Bruff and his men followed the Lassen Trail, which Peter Lassen had promoted as a shortcut through the southern Sierra Nevada mountains. In fact, Lassen was profiting by selling land to the new immigrants, and the trail added about 200 treacherous miles to the journey. Travel through the mountains was difficult. Many of Bruff's men were sick and discouraged. It was late October, and they only had enough mules to pull 4 of their 6 remaining wagons. Bruff volunteered to stay with the wagons and sent the others ahead to find help at Lassen's ranch. While waiting for his rescuers, Bruff offered any assistance he could to many other travelers who passed through on the trail, but a rescue party never arrived, and Bruff was left to spend the next 5 months camping through the winter in the mountains. In April, weak with hunger, he gathered his journals and other meager belongings and set out to find help. He eventually passed out on the trail, was found, and was rescued. Bruff recuperated and traveled through California's gold country, making many drawings of geographic landmarks and mining camps. He left California by sea in June 1851. When he arrived in New York 1 month later, some of his luggage was stolen from the dock. Fortunately, none of his journals or drawings were lost. Like most of his fellow 49ers, Bruff failed to strike gold in California, but his detailed account of his journey continues to be a virtual goldmine of information for scholars and researchers who want to learn about life on the California Trail. Learn more about the adventures of Joseph Goldsborough Bruff. Look for these books in your local library or online. 49er, The Extraordinary Gold Rush Odyssey of Joseph Goldsborough Bruff by Ken Lizio, and Gold Rush, the journals, drawings, and other papers of J. Goldsborough Bruff, Captain, Washington City and California Mining Association, April 2, 1849 through July 20, 1851, by Joseph Goldsborough Bruff. Be sure to follow the Archway's Facebook page and check back next Wednesday for another episode of Wagon Train Wednesdays.